So when I was looking at the day I was coming back and what would be going
Welcome
on,
back.
I was thinking, yes, thank you. I was thinking, okay, so we're hopefully going to be talking about St. John's in the Sweet 16. Like, that'll be that Monday when I come back. I would have never thought it before the season started. We'll be talking about St. John's in the Sweet 16. Well, we're not, as they get bounced by Arkansas. And it was just the way it happened. It was miserable, quite frankly. And it's not as if the entire season and what this season meant is wiped away. It's one of those deals where it's so important to get back on the map from where they were. And they had an amazing season, the best in many, many years. But, this game, the way it played out, the fact that it's John Calipari and Pitino and the history and how terrible they were shooting the ball and the massive amount of fouls, it was like going to the dentist watching this game. And it's over. And you feel terrible for R.J. Lewis. You feel terrible for the guys who are not going to be on the team next year. This was a spectacular season that ended in a thud.
I'm glad you said what you said, and there's a lot there. So, number one, the season's not a waste. And the amount of people that have sat there and said, well, they just wasted what a great year. They didn't waste a great year. This is a team that, they won 20 games last season, but even Pitino, I think he called it one of the toughest years he had ever coached. They won 20 games. They were on their way back. This year turned out to be, think about this. They had 2 10-game winning streaks this year. Teams don't do that. A lot of teams don't do that, I should say. They won the Big East regular season championship. They won the Big East tournament championship. There was a lot to be proud of if you're a St. John's fan this year. That having been said, when you go to the tournament, and you know what? I know I've mentioned this game ad nauseum, and I apologize, but there's reason for it. When I did that game at UConn, my partner was Steve Lapis, who ironically was on the call with Andrew Catalan on Saturday. He did 1 million St. John's games and Big East games this year for FS1 and for Compass Media Networks. We had the conversation on the air, and I remember asking him the question, with the way they shoot threes, and free throw shooting wasn't an issue yesterday, but at the time, during the season it was. I asked him point blank, can they win an NCAA championship? Are they a Final Four team? And he said, that's the one thing that could come back to bite them. And then the other thing he pointed out, and I think it played out exactly the way he said it on Saturday, he said the Big East officials will let them play a physical style of basketball. When you get to the tournament, you have no idea what type of crew you're going to get. And when you watch that game on Saturday, there was a foul called on every other possession. You had guys in foul trouble with 8 minutes to go in the first half, which was ridiculous. R.J. Lewis couldn't shoot, and not even from distance. He's missing layups and from in close. Aaron Scott couldn't shoot. It was just a big pile of crap, as it turned out. And it wasn't their day. Yeah, and the 3-point shooting, 2 for 22. You're a math guy. Was that 5%? Well, 1 for 11 is it's like 8%, something like that.
2 for 22.
It's hard, yeah.
It's
well, in
almost
fairness,
impossible.
Arkansas wasn't any better.
No, but still.
But it's hard to win when you're shooting 2 for 22. And more than that, the amount of, I don't want to say chippies. That's not fair because Arkansas was contesting and it blocked shots too. But they missed so many shots from in tight that it doomed them. And, Arkansas won the mid-range game, and they beat them.
Yeah, and it also seemed like they were getting beat off the dribble more than ever this year. I don't remember them having guys blow by them and get to the basket in the way that Arkansas did. And that's some of the stuff that you see when you start getting into these more athletic conferences.
Okay, so now let's go back to Brandon Tierney when he came on with you and Boomer. And now, let me be clear. St. John's season was phenomenal.
When did he come on? We're talking a long time ago?
About 2 weeks ago when the Brandon Tierney report started. Didn't he come on with you guys at 9 o'clock? Am I missing this? One time, right?
I don't remember it, but that doesn't mean...
He wasn't here? G wasn't here?
Well, if he wasn't here, then you were here.
Oh, maybe it was Sal. It was the day I was at the Big Ten tour. Okay.
All right.
So BT went on with Sal and Boomer. Sorry about that. And one of the things he said, his words, not mine, was how, things are going to step up a little bit because he made it very clear the Big East has a lot of wretched teams. Now, that's not to take away from anything they did this year. I'll be very clear. They had a marvelous season. But to your point, now all of a sudden, maybe you don't get away with the little things you were getting away with throughout the course of the season when you weren't playing UConn or Marquette or Creighton because the rest of I don't know. But you're right. It was different on Saturday against Arkansas.
Yeah, and it was frustrating. First of all, the shooting was frustrating. The defense, even though it's not like Arkansas scored 80 points, but it felt different in this game. And then, sitting R.J. Lewis at that point, and I know Pitino was getting grilled about it, and I thought he handled it well after the game, and he didn't lose it. It looked like he was about to lose it at one point when he said, you know why he wasn't playing. But when you get that close in the game, and then he hits the 2 free throws, and you're down 2 at that point, I think, and then he's done. I mean, that surprised me. Even though he was terrible, it was like, all right, maybe you think you get the game that close, and all of a sudden, maybe the player turns into the player you expected. But then I remembered, and this is interesting. I'm not on the court, but I'm watching the game. I remembered that rant that he had that we played from the show on Vice.
I know what you're going to say.
And he said it's not about missing shots.
Yep.
It's about your attitude.
And your effing defense.
Right. So, and it's like you can't miss a shot and then hang your head because that's just, you got to be able to bounce back. So what I'm thinking is it wasn't just about how bad he was. It just, he didn't like his demeanor and body language in those crunch time minutes. And he said, listen, I'm going to sit him down. But the problem is it didn't work. So that's why everybody was grilling him. And they ended up going it was like an 11-2 run after that by Arkansas, and they blew the doors off him. So it just looked bad. But I'm assuming that's what it was about. And it wasn't just performance. It was like the hang-dogging he was doing.
I think it was all of it, too. It wasn't even just whether you want to say he was lackluster getting back on defense. 3 for 17 is 3 for 17. Yeah. It was also, I don't remember, I think it was the second half. Maybe it was in the first half. I don't remember. He had the one play where he's right of the lane, kind of moving towards the basket and just dribbled the ball right into the defender. And they go back the other way. He just didn't seem like, I don't want to say focused. That's not the right word, but it almost seemed like he just didn't have it that day. Now, the way Pitino handled it, I thought was fine. I also think he could have just said, he didn't have it. We were just looking for the right combination today. That's it.
Yeah.
But I understand why he probably got annoyed. I probably would have gotten annoyed as well.
Well, he didn't want to kill his player. And, the Big East player of the year, didn't want to destroy him in that moment. Everybody knew what was going on. And, of course, you got to ask the question. But he wasn't going to sit there and say, listen, the guy stunk in the biggest game we've ever played.
I know.
You're not going to sit there and say that. And I think that people were wanting him to say that. But, just to go back to what this season meant, and I know a lot of people had just jumped into paying attention to St. John's, but if you remember when I first got here and was talking about St. John's, and it was Chris Mullen was the coach, and then they were like, nobody gave 2 craps about that program. And it got to the point, I remember, my mom went to the game. She went to St. John's and brought me to a ton of games growing up. I brought my mom to a game. We're sitting there courtside at Carnesecca. She got to meet Chris Mullen before the game. Gave us all these swag bags and things, just dying for attention. It was basically like the Red Bulls. That's what it was like, dying for attention. Sure. As they're going through bad coach after bad coach after bad coach, same situation. I remember talking to Mullen saying, listen, I love this program with everything, but we just don't have the money to support it. I'm in there fixing bathrooms myself and everything else. So you think where they were to this season, it's remarkable to happen that quickly. Nil money, Rick Pitino, we know why. But now, will it be sustainable, and how long is Rick going to do this? And then who's he going to hand it off to really is going to be the issue going forward. All right, you're on the map now. You're back on the map. How long do you stay there before you go back into that please come to the games St. John's again?
Well, to me, I liken it to the way people used to look at the Yankees. They would spend all this money and they'd be good, and people would say it's because they spent the money. Well, that's part of it. The other part of it is you got to get the right collection of guys. There's a lot of teams in college basketball and in Major League Baseball that spend a lot of money, but the Padres last year, I don't want to call it a big flop, but that didn't exactly turn out the way they thought it was going to turn out. It's not as easy as just throwing. Now, it helps. There is no question about it. It helps, and I do think if you look at the fact of what is remaining in the Sweet 16. You've got all the power conference teams represented. You don't really have any of the Cinderella stories left. A big part of that is you've got for the most part, a lot of the nil teams, the teams that have money to spend, have the best players. And that's, I can tell you personally, you look at BYU and Alabama, you've got 2 kids from Rutgers that are no longer on Rutgers because Rutgers couldn't pay them.
Yeah.
That are going to be going head-to-head Thursday night in Newark in Mawat-Mag and Cliff Amore. That's what the games become. My point is, as long as Rick Pitino is there, he'll have the money to do what he has to do, but he's also going to recognize the talent he needs. And I think he'll make the right decisions and put the right team together, and that is a huge part of it.
And just looking at the Sweet 16 and the brackets that were put up there by CBS Sports Network, I mean, it is frustrating to see the only 2 seed not in the Sweet 16
Understood.
being St. John's, and the highest seed left is the one that beat St. John's. I mean, it's just it's annoying. It is. It's very annoying, and the way that they lost is very annoying. But all the things that you talked about to come back to bite them. You know, it was interesting because Pitino, we asked Pitino about that, about the 3-point shooting, and he said that it was going to be a bigger deal. The free throw shooting was going to be a bigger deal. I don't think he ever imagined they'd be so bad in a game that they'd be 2 for 22. I mean, I don't think he envisioned that. But all those things that we were talking about, what could hold them back in the tournament, absolutely did. And it doesn't normally work that way when people break things down and look at a team and say, that's what's going to hold them back. I'm telling you right now. And bang, every single one of those teams, you know, not as athletic, can't shoot the 3, bad free throw shooting, like all of those things just came up and bang, all just in one giant big bang in the biggest moment.
And you were away, and I don't remember. Maybe it was Memphis. I don't remember. There was one team though that was 1 for 15 in the first half of one of these games from 3. I mean, again, it is a beautiful thing when the ball's going in, but when it's not going in, it is clunky, it's slow, and it's just bad to watch. And I will come back to, I really do think the fouls were a big part of this game too. The way the game was, and it was, you know, when you've got 2 physical teams like you did in Arkansas and St. John's, it's fun to watch, and it's also tough to watch, especially when they're not letting them go. But the problem with that is if you let them go too far, the game gets really chippy, and then all of a sudden, you know, you get the fights that break out.
Yeah.
So it was, to me, it was the perfect storm, unfortunately, for St. John's.
If I were a time traveler from, I don't know, the 1700s and showed up on Saturday and watched that game, and they said, this is college basketball, I'd never turn on another college basketball game ever again.
It wasn't great.
I'd say, how do you guys watch this?
I agree.
I mean, because it's St. John's, because it's the tournament, because of all those things, you sit there and you watch it till the end. But, I mean, it was a miserable experience. And I generally love the college basketball game because it's just packaged. It's perfect. It's just, you know, everybody's giving maximum effort, especially in the tournament and the buzzer beaters and everything else. But this game was just, it was miserable. And I've got zero rooting interest the rest of the way.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Zero. I mean, and I because I was away, I ended up doing no brackets. So, I mean, you could bet on games next week. Maybe I'll do that. But I mean, there is nothing about this tournament now that isn't monetarily based that I'm going to give a crap about.
Yeah, no, I get it. UConn's out as well, and they played really well against Florida. I know, I guess some of the people that bet on that game got burned or won by the late 3 by McNeely. But, yeah, I don't know. The tournament the weekend was fine. The Maryland game was a blast, I think, but that's few and far between for the most part. I thought Baylor-Duke started well, but then you just saw Duke. It just slowly kind of kept going in the wrong direction. They wound up winning by whatever it was, 20 points. And I do agree with you. The one thing I always say to Austin Johnson's my partner on the radio for Rutgers broadcasts, and I would always tell him, you would have games where you've got officiating crews that will let you just kick the living crap out of each other, and they're just, guys, we're gonna let you play. Then you've got other crews that don't let you, blow on a guy's shoulder. And then you got crews that change mid-game. The inconsistency of officiating from crew to crew is nauseating.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the biggest thing when you're criticizing officials is like, how can this be a foul here and not here at this point in the game? It's like, I don't know what to coach my guys. I don't know what to tell my guys. And the fact that we got baseball starting on Thursday, by the way, here in New York, I mean, that's
doesn't help the tournament for people watching in New York.
No, right.
That is very true.
That is the end of college basketball in New York, unless you've got a bracket and you're still alive and you're gambling. I mean, that's it. It's going to be Mets and Yankees starting on Thursday. That's why this week is also very, very exciting. And then we're getting closer to April and the draft, and things are going to be moving.